Hey guys, happy Self-Love Saturday. It's Rissa Vibes here. I'm so excited to connect with you today. I want to talk a little bit about self-love from the perspective of the full moon eclipse that we experienced last night. I know that most of you watched the full moon eclipse live reading that I did at Indigo Goddesses page last night, but if you missed it, you can follow the link in my bio and the full reading is there on my YouTube channel. So I want to talk about self-love from that perspective. And what we talked about last night during the reading is that a lot of shadow aspects of ourselves and our own awareness of shadow aspects in others is really heightened right now. And with that awareness, with that heightened energy, we are able to see a lot more than we've seen before. Now, with that awareness, we're able to kind of go within ourselves and notice the places in which we're not necessarily working in the ways that we know we normally would. We're not necessarily practicing what we preach. We're not embodying our message fully. And when we notice we have two options. We have the choice to accept and take responsibility for that and change it, or we have the option of surrendering completely to that shadow aspect and not changing it and choosing to live in that world. That's a very interesting perspective, and it is something that is significant when it comes to the yin and yang of life and energy and the balance. It's the duality, it's the separation. What I found in noticing those things is that we all have that separation within us to some degree, and it is our ability to recognize those things and accept them and love ourselves unconditionally through that and love others for their own aspects of that really allow us to elevate. It's not to say that we'll ever clear completely the shadow aspect. That's not necessarily the goal. The goal is really accepting and loving ourselves despite it and knowing which parts of those aspects of ourselves that we can tolerate and which we won't tolerate within us. And we do that based on our own expectations of our own self-worth and our own expectations of others valuing our self-worth. So with unconditional love, it's so important to embody the compassion and the acceptance of others no matter what, but it's also important to set boundaries so that you can know and keep safe your own heart and your own ability to continue unconditionally loving the situation. It's hard to unconditionally love if you continue to allow people to do things that you don't agree with or you don't really value, or that doesn't respect your self-worth. So it is important to love from a distance in those situations and to make sure that when you're loving from that distance, you're able to give your heart into the energy of that circumstance from a pure perspective, from a space where you know you feel safe and you feel comfortable, and nothing is wrong with that. The most important thing that I feel like is really important for people to hold on to in that perspective is knowing that no matter what world we're seeing, no matter what perspective we're experiencing with the unconditional love, we are able to and allowed to express and accept that within ourselves. And when we do, we find liberation in knowing that we have a right to feel the way we do, and we also have a right to find the places where we could be doing better, where we could be seeing more of our shadow and clearing more of our shadow as well. And by accepting that and clearing those parts of ourselves, we really elevate into higher consciousness, and we elevate into a higher self-love as well. So I encourage everybody that may be experiencing some tension in interactions with certain people in their lives, or maybe going through some Mercury retrograde challenges or full moon eclipse clearing and purging challenges, to really dive deep inside of themselves, really reflect on the interactions that they're having with people and the interactions of self, meditation and self-dialogue, where there are places you can be more unconditionally loving to others and more unconditionally loving to yourself. It's so important to do both. It's important to never sacrifice your own unconditional love of self for the unconditional love of others. Instead, it's all about balancing. It's about saying, how can I still unconditionally love myself and still unconditionally love that person or that experience or that circumstance? And what dynamic would allow for that to be safe and for that to feel good? and then following that, because sometimes that does mean separation. Sometimes that does mean no communication or no interaction, and that is okay. And once we're able to accept that and realize that the things that we experience and the relief that we may experience when we make those choices are our signs to continue trusting in our own intuitive ability and into our own inner peace and self-worth. And following that is the biggest act of self-love that you can. So unconditionally love yourself, set the boundaries you need to make sure that that feels safe for yourself, and unconditionally loving others and setting those boundaries to make sure you feel safe in that dynamic, and holding on to that unconditionally loving vibration and the compassion is so, so important. So I urge you to do that today and to really practice it this week. And I hope that helps you guys in any situations you might be going through. I'm sending so much love your way, and I will see you soon. Bye.